Right now, your Nvidia settings are wrong, and it's likely holding you back from a bunch of FPS, smoother frame times, and lower input lag. And honestly, guys, I don't blame you for making these mistakes, because now you've got two programs you need to manage, the Nvidia app and the Nvidia control panel, to dial in these settings, and it's so easy to make mistakes. So today, guys, I'm going to fix this for you. I'm going to take you through every single setting in both applications, the Nvidia app and the Nvidia control panel. I'm going to tell you the best setting you need to be using and give you an explanation of why, so that you're armed with all the information you need moving forward in case they roll out new settings in the future. So we're going to start off today by tackling the Nvidia app. You can just search for it in your start menu. And the reason we're starting with this as opposed to the control panel is that most of the settings we can control for our Nvidia GPU are in here now. When it first rolled out, it only had a very small subset of settings, whereas the control panel was the main hub for it all. These days, it's kind of swapped over. There's a bunch of new settings in the app, which you cannot get to from the control panel. There are still also some settings we can only control from the control panel, and then there's some that are in both, and they'll just sync up no matter which one you work with. But starting with the Nvidia app makes the most sense, because the first thing we're going to do is come down to your drivers and ensure that you've got the latest game-ready driver installed. Once that driver's installed, click on graphics on the left and then go up to global settings, and here's where we can start dialing in the settings that will apply to every single game on your PC. There might be certain cases where specific program settings might do a little bit better, but once again, few and far between. We're just going to look at the global so we can cover everything at once. So beginning from the top, we've got RTX Dynamic Vibrance. This is essentially a post-processing vibrance and saturation adjustment. In general, I would recommend that you keep this off. It's just far better to adjust your monitor settings, adjust the in-game color settings, and I'm going to show you a little tweak later on in the control panel that can really boost that vibrance as well. You just don't need to play around with this. Leave it off. CUDA GPUs for most people is going to be very simple. You're only going to have one option here. Just make sure you've got your GPU selected. Very simple. We've then got these three DLSS override settings. There's model presets, frame generation mode, and super resolution mode. Very simple. We want to leave these all at use the 3D application setting. What this means for these settings and any others you see it down here is basically do what the game says. So if I want to apply DLSS in a certain game to lower my resolution, use AI to upscale it, and get better FPS, which is definitely something you should be doing when you have it available, you want to be able to control that just from the game. Let the game control all that. You don't want to apply something globally here that's going to overwrite that and potentially run with worse performance. I've seen some people come in here and try and override everything. It will crush your FPS in a lot of circumstances. Same thing goes for frame limiters. Any of that kind of stuff, do it within the game's graphics options. You only want to come in here program by program to potentially enable certain versions of DLSS that might not be available in certain games, but that's going way beyond what we're going to cover today. Just leave it like this. And speaking of using the in-game settings rather than the settings in here, smooth motion is definitely something you want to keep off. I don't know why they've called it this, because this is actually just frame generation or frame interpolation, whatever you want to call it, where it will take two real frames that are being generated. So say you've got a 60 FPS game that's running, obviously doesn't feel too good. Well, you can run smooth motion, frame generation, frame interpolation, whatever, and essentially double that frame rate, because it's going to make a new fake frame in between the real frames, which makes it all look smoother. It looks like it's running at 120 FPS. You want to keep this off for two reasons. Number one, in most games, frame generation is just going to add a load of input lag, and you need actually a decently high FPS in the first place to get good feeling out of frame generation. But number two, just use the frame generation in the game that offers it. Don't turn it on globally here. This is going to ruin how a lot of your games feel, even if they might look smoother, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Just keep this off. Now, because you're watching this video, I can only assume that you're just like me and you spend hours on hours sitting at your desk grinding away at video games. And if you're gonna do it, you need to be equipped with a good office chair. Lucky for me, the guys over at FlexiSpot have sent me over their C7 Morpher, a brand new ergonomic chair designed for all-day comfort, no matter what activity it is you're doing. The 3D adjustable headrest, flexible backrest, and air lumbar support technology keep my posture perfect, no matter how long I'm working or gaming. Genuinely, I have never seen a chair that can be customized or fine-tuned as much as this thing. I mean, FlexiSpot literally had to print out this gigantic bit of card just so they could show you everything it can do. You've got absolutely everything covered, from seat depth and cushioning to fully adjustable armrests that move with you, and a ton of support for both the lower and upper back. back. And for when it's time to relax, you can just recline back and the lumbar support moves with you for perfect comfort all the way. Oh yeah, and this thing also has a goddamn footstool. Perfect for when I just want to kick back and watch some YouTube videos. And the best part for you guys is that you can try this chair risk-free for 30 days thanks to FlexiSpot's generous returns policy. And it also comes with a 10-year warranty. You can use my link in the description below with the code C750 to get the best price at checkout and save your back before it's too late. Then you can be like me, the coolest, most comfortable gamer in town. That was cringe. Back to the video. Low latency mode is definitely something we want to have set to either on or ultra. This is going to enable Nvidia's Reflex low latency backend technology, which will allow you to lower your overall input latency on literally any game. It is great. The decision between picking on or ultra, though, is a bit of an interesting one. I would say for most people, stick this on ultra, run with it. If it feels like it's running well and you're not getting any hitching or stuttering in games, then leave it as is. It's going to give you the lowest input latency. But some people do notice some hitching and stuttering when using it on ultra, in which case you might just have to turn it to on. So yeah, start with ultra, turn it back to on if you get some of that hitching. For image sharpening in global settings, I would recommend you keep this off. A lot of games that have DLSS in now will have their own sharpening settings inside the game, which will just run a lot better than this. This can tend to overly sharpen games and lead to some artifacting, which makes it a lot harder to actually see enemies, for example, in a competitive shooter. What you can do for certain games that might still be a bit blurry or might be older, that don't have DLSS or sharpening or anything involved, you could come into the program settings and enable this specifically for those. But for global, just leave it off. Moving on to max frame rate, a lot of you are going to go, why would I ever want to limit my frame rate anyway? I want to get the most FPS possible. There are certain circumstances where limiting your FPS can gain you better performance. But if you do want to do that, once again, do it in-game. Most games these days will allow you to set a max frame rate in-game. And you can even get max frame rate for when you're in menus or when you're in certain game modes or when you're alt-tabbed. So it's all controlled within the game. Don't control it out here in your global settings. Leave this off. For monitor technology, if you have a G-Sync monitor and you set it up correctly, G-Sync is great. It will make it so that your monitor doesn't run at a constant refresh rate. It will actually match the refresh rate to the FPS of the game you've got. So even if your monitor is a 240 hertz monitor, it can actually then run at 163 hertz to match 163 FPS you get in a game. And then when the FPS drops, so does the refresh rate. But why would you want to do that? Well, number one, it lowers input latency to have both of those two things matching. And it also reduces or completely eliminates screen tearing, which is this visual bug you can essentially notice where you get lines across your screen, especially when you turn very quickly in shooters, for example. So if you have a G-Sync monitor, 100% put this to G-Sync compatible and run with it. If you don't have a G-Sync monitor, or you just have an incredibly high refresh rate monitor that you don't want to be lowering the refresh rate of to match a game which is running not too well, which is fairly common these days, then I would actually just recommend you run fixed refresh at that point. It will just lead to less problems down the line, basically. For OpenGL GDI compatibility and Vulkan OpenGL present method, leave both of these to auto. This is just going to make it so that the driver that you've got installed for your GPU, the driver we did earlier, it will just let that automatically control both of these settings as it needs to. For the power management mode, you want to turn this up to prefer maximum performance. This will cause overall more power draw during the day, during your gaming sessions, but it will keep your GPU clocks running as they need to. It won't downclock, it'll avoid stuttering in a lot of games, and overall, it's in the name. It will give you maximum performance. Shader cache size. This is such a big one in this day and age. How many games have you played where we have to compile shaders when we turn on the game, or when we go into new areas, there's new shaders this, shaders that. DirectX 12 loves shaders. You need to set this to unlimited. The only reason to not set this to unlimited is if you are really, really strict on C drive space, because that's where all of these shaders are going to get put. In that case, you should be freeing up at least 100 gig on your C drive, not filling it up. Go and clear that space out now, and then set this to 100 gig. But for anyone else where you've got over 100 gig, you can set this to unlimited. It's never going to go super massive anyway, because shaders do get cleared out as and when they're not needed. But this is going to avoid so many stuttering problems. The amount of games that have released that this helps out so much with when it comes to stuttering. So yeah, set it to unlimited. Okay, vertical sync or V-sync, a very interesting one. It's all dependent on what you have your monitor technology set to up here. If you're running G-Sync, then you want to have vertical sync on globally. This will apply in every single game, even if it says in the in-game settings that V-Sync is off. This will override it. You need V-Sync on to run G-Sync. However, if you made the decision up here to go with fixed refresh, turn vertical sync to use the 3D application setting. Some people might set it to off. I prefer to just turn off V-Sync in games, piece by piece, game by game. I just think that's a lot safer than forcing it off, because there might be games that don't have a V-Sync option, and you might get some compatibility issues or performance problems by forcing it off in a game that doesn't allow it to be off, if that makes sense. For virtual reality VR SS, make sure you've got this off. This is a very, very heavy setting on your GPU if you're playing virtual reality games, and you just don't need to have it on. Most of you guys watching this probably don't even use VR anyway, so yeah, just best to leave this off so it's not enabling in games where we don't realize and could be sapping performance. From here, you then want to click Show Legacy Settings, and we're going to see a bunch of new settings that previously you could only control from within the control panel, but they've given us access to do them in here now, which is really good. For anisotropic filtering, leave this to application controlled. You don't need to force this in here. You can get some really weird issues in games that don't support anisotropic filtering. Minecraft was a big one. It made every single block have lines across each block at the joins. Really, really weird. That's just one example. There are many, many more. Leave this to application controlled. For the anti-aliasing settings, FXAA and transparency, you want to leave both of these off. They're called off. It's essentially like application controlled, where once again, if we want to enable anti-aliasing in games, you can do it from within the game. You wouldn't want to be using FXAA anyway in 2025. It is by far the worst version of anti-aliasing we have available. It's horridly blurry. If you turn this on, you ain't gonna see shit in your games. So yeah, leave both of these off. For background application max frame rate, I would actually recommend that you turn this on and set this to 30 FPS. Some games do give you the option of setting what the frame rate of your game will go to when you Alt-Tab out of it, but many don't still. And having this set to 30 FPS will mean that when I Alt-Tab out of a game that's hogging my PC because I want to look at a tutorial on YouTube or quickly do some other kind of multitasking, it will lower the FPS of the game, free up some system resources, and make my PC run a hell of a lot better. And I've not seen any weird compatibility issues with this when it came to Alt-tabbing in and out of a game. So yeah, a very nice setting to turn on. MFAA I used to recommend turning on, but this is something which is so rarely supported these days that it's just safer to keep it off. For PhysX, you want to put this to auto, let your GPU handle it. And then now at the bottom here, we've got the 4 texture filtering options. The only one you need to change in here, if it isn't set correctly, is the quality setting. And the reasoning is, as you can see, when I change this to performance, for example, it turns anisotropic sample optimization on. If I put it to high quality, it blanks out the other two. So this is like the master setting that controls all the other settings. The default is quality, which is good. In the control panel, it used to not be. I think potentially performance was, or high performance. The only reason to change this to performance is if you're on a really, really low end PC and you're just trying to scrounge for every single little bit of FPS you can get, in which case run this at performance. All it will actually change is the anisotropic sample optimization. It will make your textures look a little bit worse across all your games, but for most people, leave this at quality. It makes your games look good, and it doesn't cost any FPS on most modern systems. So the final thing now before we head over to the Nvidia control panel is to come to settings and make sure that Nvidia overlay is turned off. Everything that's offered here, easily capturing videos and screenshots, use OBS or just the Windows print screen. Change graphics settings. Well, we can do that in game, or we can close the game and come back here and play around with stuff. But I've already set up your graphics settings, so you don't need to worry about that. Monitor system performance. Use other apps, use the in-game FPS settings. None of this is useful. All of this will affect performance in games by running overlays. Overlays in general, you want to keep as many of them off as possible to gain you performance. Okay, let's move over to the Nvidia control panel. So getting to the Nvidia control panel is a lot easier than the app. You just right click on the desktop and you click Nvidia control panel. And after it loads, there we go, NVIDIA control panel. Very similar to the NVIDIA app, you want to come over to the Manage 3D Settings option on the left and then select Global. And in here, we've got a bunch of settings, many of which we already set over in the NVIDIA app, and they should have inherited nicely into here. For example, background application max frame rate is set to 30 FPS like we did over there. Image sharpening, it's off globally. You can see how it's working now. However, there are some settings in here that we didn't get to change over there. That's why we still need to use the NVIDIA control panel, annoyingly. So let's run through them. First one we're looking at in here is ambient occlusion. We actually want to turn this off. This does not turn off ambient occlusion in every game. Don't worry. If you've got ambient occlusion turned on in your game that you're playing because you want the game's shadows to look better, you want it to look more 3D, more realistic, it will still give you ambient occlusion. This is essentially a post-processing ambient occlusion that is a little bit performance heavy and doesn't look great either, so just leave it off. Next thing we're going to change is the anti-aliasing gamma correction. We were able to change some of these other anti-aliasing settings in the NVIDIA app, but this one wasn't available. You want to make sure that this is on. What this is actually going to do is give you better anti-aliasing in your games. It has absolutely no performance impact and ensures that the brightness and contrast in your games is correct while using anti-aliasing. It's a good setting. For CUDA sysmem fallback policy, you can just tell by the name of this feature that you should just be leaving this at driver default and not changing this up at all. It could just lead to issues. The next really important one is preferred refresh rate. This is set to application controlled by default, but you absolutely want to set this to highest available. Some games have built-in refresh rate limiters. Yeah, weird. You don't want any of this taking over your lovely monitor that you've bought. If you've bought a 240 or even a 360 hertz monitor like I have, you want to be getting that refresh rate out of it. Unless you're using G-Sync, obviously, and then it's going to play around. But either way, even if you have G-Sync set, you want to make sure this is set to highest available. Triple buffering is a setting that will only come into play when you're running OpenGL applications, which, as I said earlier, there are barely any of, especially games, but you still want to make sure that this is off so it doesn't come into play. The only situation where this is helpful is if you're running VSync on with no G-Sync, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. In that circumstance, it can help a little bit with screen tearing on top of the VSync, but we're not doing that, so keep it off. And then the final setting in the 3D settings area is going to be the virtual reality pre-rendered frames. This is only going to come into play if you're playing a VR game, which some of you might do. If you are, or even if you aren't, just put this to 1. It's going to give you the lowest latency when it comes to VR using a headset and playing those games. After we set all that, make sure you click apply down here. It will kind of look like it's glitching out a bit, but when the apply button disappears, that's now all locked in. I've got one final bonus setting in the NVIDIA control panel that is an absolute game changer when it comes to the color of your monitor, the saturation, the vibrance. All you need to do is come to adjust desktop color settings on the left. You can see both of my monitors here, and there's an option called digital vibrance. By default, this is set to 50%. I would try turning this up to around 70%. I wouldn't go higher than that because it can just blow the colors out and make everything look kind of like brain rot. But just turning this up to between 60 and 70, maybe 75 max, can give you so much more vibrance and color out of your monitor without having to change any monitor settings. So a very, very easy setting to change, and it looks great. Just make sure you do it for both of your monitors. My secondary monitor is a bit more muted in its colors by default, so I've had to turn it up a little bit more. Yeah, great setting to change. And so with all of those settings dialed in, alongside very good in-game settings, you are going to be pushing your performance to the max, not holding yourself back with any random things that you got wrong in the NVIDIA settings. Hopefully in the future, they will move everything into the NVIDIA app so we don't need to use the control panel, fingers crossed. But for now, if you did enjoy the video and found this helpful, then make sure you like the video down below and subscribe to my channel for more PC optimization guides, game settings guides, and everything in between for you guys.